Hey YouTube, Audra here. We're sitting in front of my 55-gallon tank on the floor, and I bought goodies. Let me show you. She's hiding in the corner. Bought a beautiful black marbled angelfish. And an even more beautiful koi angelfish. So, today I'm going to show you how to properly get these guys acclimated. These two fish were 11 bucks a piece, so I definitely want them to go into the water feeling as comfortable and well acclimated as possible. So today I'm going to show you how to properly drip acclimate your fish. Okay, so to do a proper drip acclimation process, you need a few things. One of the most important things you need is some sort of way to test your water. I use the API Freshwater Master Test Kit. It tests nitrates, nitrites, pH, and ammonia. Those are the things that you want to have you want to be able to test when you do this. You also need some airline tubing, a bucket that hasn't had any chemicals in it whatsoever. As a matter of fact, that bucket is only used for that. And you need some veggie clips or some way to hook this on. These are just the little clownfish ones that you can get at PetSmart. You can get them for like $1. They're really handy. I hardly ever put veggies in my tank, but when I do, they're pretty nice. But just something so you can hang on to the airline tubing. Okay? So you need those things. So once you get those ready, then it's time to start the acclimating process. I also forgot to mention you need something to write down your test results on. In this case, I'm using my laptop because that's where I keep all of my test results. But yeah, so let's get started. You have your bucket. You want to make sure that your bucket is big enough to hold the water and the fish without the fish having to swim sideways or have parts of them out of the water. I'm going to probably tilt my bucket on the side for a minute until we get enough water in. But you also want it to be large enough that not only can it do that, but it can also hold the water that we're going to drip into it from our big tank. So, yeah, maybe. So we're just going to start by putting the fish and the water from the aquarium or from the fish store into your bucket. Both of these fish came from the same tank, same filter, so it's the same water. If you go to PetSmart, they all run on the same water, so it doesn't matter. You can put the fish in together. But if they were on different tanks, I would probably recommend putting them in different water. I'm going to kind of tilt this up on the side and slowly pour the water into the bucket. Put this in the bag. Another thing, these bags from my local fish store are like super good. So I tend to hang on to them, let them dry out. I also hang on to the rubber bands because with my guppies, they have so many babies that occasionally I feel like it's time to give some away. And so it's nice to have those bags on hand and I don't have to pay for them. So we've got the first fish in here. Ah, so pretty. I got a clear bucket just for you guys. Now we're going to do the second fish. Okay, so both fish are in the bucket. And the bucket is a little shallow still. So what I'm going to do is take some of these magazines, my aquarium fish magazines. Yes, I am that nerdy. And I'm going to prop them under one corner so that the water is a little deeper on one side, but the bucket is still not unstable by any means. That way they have enough room to swim and it's deep enough for them. Okay? So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our airline, or the next thing we're going to do is not take our airline tubing, is we are going to test the water for, like I said, nitrates, nitrites, pH, and ammonia. Those are the 4 big things that we need to know. You're going to test your water in the bucket, and you're going to test the water in your fish tank. That way we know what the difference is between the two and how long it might take to get this process done. And keep in mind, drip acclimating your fish is a really great way to do it because it drastically reduces how many fish die when you introduce them to the tank. But it does take probably 2 to 3 hours if you do it properly. So I'm going to test my tanks and then I will be right back. Okay, so we have the readings for the water that came from the fish store and the water in our fish tank. And now we just kind of have to compare the two. For me, the water that came from the fish store is a pH of 6.2. The water in my tank is an 8.4, which is on the high end for angels, but I know that my tank runs at an 8.4 all the time, and stability is more important than optimal ranges. So that's the biggest thing that's going to have to change in my case. The other difference is the water in the bucket has a nitrate level of 80 parts per million, and the nitrate level in my tank is 10 parts per million, which kind of shocked me because usually it's always 0. So I guess it's time for another water change. But yeah, so we have quite a ways to go, and the way we do that slowly is we take our airline tubing. And what we're going to do is siphon water from the tank into the bucket. And we want to do it at 1 drip per second to start with. So the way we do that is we tie knots in the airline tubing. And then we'll tighten the knots as needed to get the drips going the right way. So what I'm going to do is I'll do 2 knots, probably. Just like regular knots like this. And I'm going to have 2 of them. That way I can adjust as needed. Okay? And we're going to start our siphon. Now, the way some people suggest to do it is to suck on the tubing. And I personally think that's really gross. Because you might get like fish water in your mouth. Gross. So, if you just completely submerge the airline tubing up in your fish tank water and get all the air bubbles out, as long as the water, or as long as the part that's going into your bucket is lower than the lowest point on your fish tank, it should siphon just fine. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so you can see behind me, I've got my drip line going. Got 2 tight knots in there. And drip is coming out into the water at about 1 drip per second. You can't really tell. See, my 2 fish are down there and they're doing fine. No visible signs of stress or anything. So we're going to let that drip for about half an hour. And then we're going to come back and test the water again to see if we've seen any changes. And we're just going to keep doing that for a little bit. And then I'll show you what happens after we start noticing some changes. Okay, so it's been half an hour. And I just tested the water in the bucket, and the pH has gone up from 6.2 to 6. What did I write down? 6.8. So that's progress. What we're going to do now is I'm going to remove about 2 cups of water, because that's about how much went in from the bucket, and just dump it in the sink. We're not going to put it back in the tank, because any of the water that was from the local fish store, we don't want to go into the tank because you never know what kind of bacteria and stuff's in there. So that's just going to go into the sink. We're going to set the timer for another half hour, and we're going to come back and test it again. Okay, so we've been doing the drip acclimation at 1 drop per second for the last hour now. I just tested the I just did my test again, and the pH is now up to almost 7. And now that it's been an hour, we're going to up or increase the speed just a little bit. So we're going to adjust the knots so that it's doing about 3 or 4 drops per second. And now I'm going to check every 15 minutes. I'm going to test to see what the levels are. Whoops. I'm going to test it every 15 minutes and remove water. Every time you're going to remove as much water as came in. Just guesstimate it. And then once the levels are where they need to be, then it's time to put the fish in the tank. And I will show you that here in a couple minutes. Okay, so it's been about 4 hours now since I was last on here. But the pH is finally matched. That's what took the longest. But because it was such a huge jump going from like a 6 to an 8.4, it was important to go slowly because you don't want to put your fish into shock. You just don't want to go too fast on it because it just can make them sick, make them uncomfortable, make them stressed out. And you don't want that, especially when your fish cost almost $11 a piece. So the pH is finally matched. Ammonia, nitrate, nitrite all match. Everything's good. So now it's time to net my fish and put them in their new homes. So that's what I'm going to do now. First I'm going to stop this thing. Whoops. I'm just finishing up the siphon so that I can put this away. So I'm not dripping water all over the place. Okay. Now, I'm just going to net one fish at a time. Let's see if you can see this. They're both in there. You just got to be really gentle. You don't want to damage your fins or anything. Relax. And I just let them swim out. Not that you could see that at all. So this next one I'll just do where you can see the tank. Oh, she looks so pretty in there. I'm so excited. Okay. So I'm going to do the same thing with the black marble fit, or angel. A lot easier to catch. I'll jump in. And just let them swim out. And you're done. So now all I'm going to do is wipe down the glass, wipe up any water that I dripped everywhere, and I'll probably shut the lights off, make the fish go to bed so everybody can relax, and then I'll feed them in the morning. So thanks for watching. Subscribe to everything. Okay, I love you all. Bye-bye.